Bradley, thank you for having me on. How are you doing yourself?
I'm doing all good. Obviously, first things first, we always got to get it out of the way. Thank you to NSC, Simply Race, SimStaff, and most importantly, Grid Finder for helping us here at the BUSR. It's going to be a bit of a different weekend, the second of two sprint race weekends here for the 8 rounds of BUSR out at Qatar. That means there's going to be no qualifying, as that sprint race is going to be in reverse championship order and set in the grid for that main race. It's also going to be interesting to see how well the drivers come through the field. Is there any interesting points of fact that you want to go over for Qatar, Kipper?
Well, I think it's most important to remember that Qatar is a super fast and flowing high downforce circuit. It challenges the drivers' abilities, and the only thing working harder than the drivers will be the tyres. And with no qualifying, you'll have to manage the tyres, especially the left sides, going around those high-speed corners, especially in the final sector as well. They've got the triple right-hander flat out. It's going to be difficult to overtake as well because it's such a high-speed circuit with high downforce. We'll see how they go.
Always a circuit where overtaking opportunities can be arisen. However, we have seen a couple of DRS trains form at this circuit due to the high-speed nature, causing the gaps to be a little bit too far on that main straight. And I think that really ties in to the importance of ERS management in these current F1 games.
That's right. Managing your ERS is crucial in order to not only stay in contention with the car in front, but also keep yourself protected from the car behind and make those opportunities where you need them.
We've seen it quite a few times this season already where one driver has had better ERS management, and that's been crucial for the race. It's been on a couple of occasions where Alex Lansdale has been really rapid on just his ERS management effectivity, but a different driver who's been in the fray at different points but really needs to catch up in the standings is Josh Woolley, who's really started to fall down the standings with lack of appearances, but most importantly, the history of him crashing continues to plague him this season.
You have many issues, whether it's a no-show or whether it's accidents. It really does hurt your confidence and it hurts your momentum in the championship. Motorsport is always about momentum, whether it's on the track or off it. So to keep yourself in contention, you just got to stay consistent, get those results, get those points. And he's just fallen out of the rhythm at the moment, so hopefully he can take a little turn around in form today.
A man who hasn't lost his rhythm is our championship leader. Chris Pilakoris took one round off out in Miami, which got won by Ben Mills. But that is the only time, other than the previous sprint weekend in the sprint race, where he hasn't been able to win himself a race. But we're going to go to 5 red lights then, as the grid has been set for the start of this race. You're going to see Chris Pilakoris and the rest have to start from the back, and it's so much cleaner. I say that, we still end up with 2 people in the wall. That's going to be Apex Predator and Willow into the wall on lap number 1. And we also see Geek in the background having a horrendous start off for the grid as well. Meanwhile, at the front, Fred Monster already losing positions down to P number 3, and Buckets gets away cleanly into the lead as Thomas tries to make a move on Youssef, who we haven't seen around for a couple of races. He's going to try and challenge the 2 Mercedes, who are now starting to swarm around him. But Chris's Pilakoris is already up into the top 10, challenging for P7 at the moment against GMT UFC in that Haas car. He has made an absolutely rapid start with Luke Sawyer directly behind him, going to try and keep tuck and toe with the Aston Martin, who leads the way in the championship. Luke Sawyer is also in a huge opportunity to see another car around. That's going to be one of the Haas cars of GMT now slipping down the order. But we also do see with Lally in the background, the teammate of Luke Sawyer, who finally won their first podium this season, sliding down the order down to P16 as Chris Pilakoris now moving to attack for the top 3 positions.
If we were able to see a replay of lap 1, I'd love to catch an onboard of Chris's first lap, because he's just flown up the order and he's continuing now. He's on the back of his teammate. Ooh,
As we see Fred Monster having to jut out from the train on the main straight. Luke Sawyer already trying to keep up with Christopher Pilakoris. Is going to go for the move on Youssef, but as he makes the move on one more car, we see Christopher Pilakoris pull another car between them. Actually, we see Luke Sawyer dropping back down, even behind Alpha after trying to make that move. He didn't make it as cleanly as he would have liked to, and is now there's the main contender for Christopher Pilakoris here today, dropping really far off of the back of him. And Christopher Pilakoris has said this is a tough track on tire wear for him as a controller player, but being a sprint race, that shouldn't show as heavily just yet.
Being a controller player at Qatar is not fun business, especially for your tyres, but he's made a very short work of grabbing his positions through the first lap, and he's challenging for the lead now. And we watch this little battle down in the middle here with Luke Sawyer.
Yeah, as we look for the grid, Greek is catching back up to the pack after that really slow start, but Luke Sawyer is having a real tough time getting past this as he tries to get past the Mercedes. The Mercedes finds their way through on that Sauber instead, and the chaos of having drivers in reverse championship order is really starting to show itself as we have a really confident move from Luke Sawyer. Getting past Youssef now. Newt is only 2 positions behind. He's the next highest driver in the championship standings after Luke Sawyer. In terms of consistent results, obviously not necessarily always finishing out races means they do find themselves a little bit lower down in the championship compared to the pace they have proven themselves to have. But Luke Sawyer through turn number 1 is going to try and outdrag that of Alpha around the outside through the second section of the track. But now he finds himself behind the battle between third and fourth, between Buckets and Cybericious. As he's now already 4 to 5 seconds behind Christopher Pilakoris.
Oh, and down the inside again he goes. Fantastic stuff from Luke Sawyer. Yes, he's fallen off the back of Christopher Pilakoris. However, that was a very decisive final sector leading onto this lap as well. Just carving through the pack, taking advantage where he can, and that's put him in a great position for the rest of this sprint.
Laps ticking on by very quickly as Alpha trying to make their way through Buckets. Obviously, a driver stepping up to fill in the grid this time around. Alpha should have confidence to try and make that move stick quite quickly, and we do see that coming through. Some of the 2 Mercedes drivers finding themselves having a lovely race at the moment.
They're not bad at all, and that's Luke Sawyer making a move onto the podium, into the podium places, and there's a pretty big battle going on just behind them as well.
Yeah, that's going to be Alpha up into P number 4. Both Mercedes in the top 4 positions, but they still got Newt behind, trying to chase down through the field. Both of the Red Bulls being consistent drivers in the top 10 this season, trying to push their standings a little bit further ahead, while Lally and the Racing Bulls, the main competitors against Red Bull at the moment, finding themselves a little further down the grid as we see some wing damage, I think, on the front end of Newt car as well. It's going to be on that front left side, and that's going to be devastating for their progression through the field. As we do see them getting forced around the outside by Assassin J. Their aggression is they're going to want to get more aggressive, but they have to keep the matter of fact that they have this wing damage under control. Really picked it up potentially in some of the scrubbling already, so they need to keep it clean for the rest of this race. Luke Sawyer has got 3.5 seconds to catch to Thomas to get second place in the sprint. Now Christopher Pilakoris has already gone down the road, 2.1 seconds in the lead, as we are now on lap 4 here, with now only 6 laps remaining. But as we're quickly approaching the end of this lap yet again, Newt is looking very dangerous behind Youssef, but not having the confidence on the brake to make the move, as Youssef picks up a 3-second penalty in the defensive move there. Buckets dropping down the order massively down to P13. But potentially finding a bit of a struggle. But as we jump back on board, we have so many people in one huge DRS train. It's going to be 3 wide into the first corner. But before we make it, Newt is going to try and make the decisive move on the inside of Youssef. Going to squeeze them tighter and take the sweeping outside line and get 2 positions in 2 corners to get into P number 5. But Assassin J now trying to capitalize as well and make their way through. They do get past that Aston Martin, now just behind Youssef as well. As we're seeing Geek try and follow Newt through this train and keep up with their fellow teammate as they get past that Aston Martin, losing 3 positions so far this lap.
Was absolutely fantastic stuff from Newt. You could see that potentially his front wing damage was hampering him as he was trying to carve up through the pack. The dirty air is a massive factor here, especially through the early and middle sectors of the lap. But he's managed to grab hold of it. He's managed that beautiful 3-wide move down the start-finish straight, and he's up into P5. And like you said, Geek following closely behind, just carving his way through the battle, a little bit wide there as well.
Yeah, we're seeing a few track limits excursions already, Youssef, with some GMT with a penalty as well. So these drivers got to make sure they are careful. They've huge curbs here that make you want to go and actually try and use them, but they can still penalize you even from passing over the white lines on a couple of the particular corners. But Geek's going to make a move to the outside line early here, deploy a lot of that ERS early down the straight, but Assassin J seems to have a little bit more grunt power to the end of the straight, but they clip their wing on the back of Youssef through turn number 1, and you're going to see all 3 cars derating then. A bunch of their battery power has already been used up, so all 3 of these drivers trying to keep hold of these positions for as long as they can. But Assassin J, with a decisive move to the inside, is going to have to keep this going for a really long time. It's going to be so difficult to keep it there, but with the confidence to keep it going again and again, they're still finding themselves alongside before this heavy braking zone. Potentially this is where they can make it stick, but Youssef collides with them on the outside side, and that's going to hold them up and now allow Geek to try and make a move. They're going to cut the corner in the process though and pick up a 3-second penalty as Youssef, with an amazing sticking move, is now going to find themselves with the shorter run to the next complex, but they get stuck onto the curb, which allows Geek the momentum, and through this section it's nearly impossible to defend if they have the inside line. So we do see it true that Geek promotes into P number 7, but it wasn't without a huge hassle on their half, as Youssef picks up another 3-second penalty in the defensive moves as well. And we've got a whole cluster of cars catching up to this. We've seen Domlab now in the Haas for P10 trying to keep up, and we're seeing Cybericious and Lally come into the fray as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Lally tries to charge through this entire pack of cars and make their way up into P8 very shortly. With the first move already done, they head into turn 1 and they calm down for a little bit, but Domlab actually gets a decent exit, but still not enough to contest that of Youssef just yet. But we have seen Youssef starting to struggle on the top of their tires, but that exit speed actually gets held up by that of Youssef. So now Lally will make their move onto Domlab instead, and now he's going to press a Youssef through the next section of the track.
That was just wonderfully aggressive racing, and you can really see how having no qualifying, having the reverse grid order sprint race has really ratcheted up the pressure and the intensity through these aggressive overtakes, aggressive defending as well in the case of Youssef. He's managed to pick up 2 penalties already in his defense. Now he's got Lally all over the back of him, approaching the latter stages of the sprint.
Lally did pick up a 3-second penalty to their name as well. We're seeing that all of the drivers around Youssef are being forced off of the track to try and make this move onto this car. He is an extremely wide in terms of defense, but he's also picking up the penalties due to how wide he is trying to drive the circuit. So wide in nature and such high speed makes it really easy to move off the track, but he gets a really poor exit through this corner. So we might see Lally go by. We also might see that of the Dom in the Haas come by as well. With the DRS open for Lally, he's going to find himself charging through that position, but it's a really tough squeeze onto Domlab, who's hard to overtake to make. He's going to switch back to the outside line, try and switch in, but Youssef is able to get a decent run through that corner, but Lally now needs to stretch 3 seconds over that of Domlab to actually keep that position secure, and he's going to hope that Youssef can keep Domlab behind to help him grow that gap.
Lally will be looking ahead, looking up the road towards Geek, hopefully as well, as you said, extending that 3-second gap back to Domlab to keep his position safe. And the fight continues. The fight continues for Youssef, defending a position once again, this time from Domlab, who doesn't have any penalties, so he doesn't have to fight this so hard, but he's going to try and make it happen on the track anyway.
I've had so much focus around the defensive drive of Youssef, who's now falling to the back end of the points, but we haven't seen the charge from Luke Sawyer to catch up to Thomas now within a second. Coming around to the final corner of the straight, he's going to catch onto that straight and hopefully try and catch some time down that down towards turn number 1, but he's only got 2 laps now to try and make this overtake onto Thomas. But P number 2, with Chris Piercoris being 4 seconds down the road, that is nearly out of the window of possibility. We've seen crazier things happen in the BUSR, but one of the things that we love to see is the racing action, the confidence from Domlab to still make that move stick. It took a couple of laps to get it engaged, get it into gear, and figure out how to pass Youssef, but he finds a nice opening move around the outside as Lally catches up to Geek. He's got 2.6 seconds right now behind Domlab, but he does not have the time to stay behind Geek. He needs to keep making this charge forward and needs to open up the gap to 3 seconds, but so does Geek. Both of these drivers teetering with a 3-second penalty, both picked up while trying to overtake Youssef, so it's now an even battle between the two of them as they both face losing a position as well. Lally looks like they're going to be all over Geek then, as they both have huge records that they have set in BUSR. Lally being the driver with the longest streak before getting a podium, and Geek being one of our oldest drivers across all of the BUSR games.
I just want to go back to that move from Dom. That was absolutely brilliant. So much commitment around the outside, swept around the outside of the Sauber. Domlab up to P9, and meanwhile there's a battle for second place here.
Luke Sawyer with the move down the inside. He didn't need the second lap to do it. The first chance of calling once he gets into the DRS appropriately, rather than just teetering on the edge. He finds the move down the inside, wasting no time, but he's not going to have any time to chase down Christos Pilakoris, as we do go back to Lally, who was able to get that overtake on to Geek in the meantime. And it does seem that Domlab will be very close to that 3-second margin, so we're going to have to keep watching that and across this final lap. But we look forward a bit. Thomas has picked up a 3-second penalty on himself, but he does have 7 seconds back to his teammate Alpha down in P number 4, and at the moment Newt hasn't been able to chase down for that P4 with the damage. You wouldn't think that without that damage potentially that was on the cards. Coming through of a final sector, then rounding of a final corner, 1 corner to go from His Majesty himself. Last time he lost in the sprint, but he rights his ways in Qatar. Christos Pilakoris comes across the line to claim another victory here, with Luke Sawyer and P number 2 trying to lose as few points as they can in the championship standings. Thomas sneaks their way into a podium after a nice drive, and it's a Mercedes double whooped in positions in P number 4 to start on the second row, followed by Newt, who survived the damage. Assassin J in P number 6, and Dom does jump both Lally and Geek. He finds the time in the final lap to jump both of them. Meanwhile, Youssef will round out the top 10 positions before Cybericious, Fred Monster, GMT, Apex Predator, and Buckets and then Willow will round out the grid. But GMT gotta be careful, picking up 15 seconds in the sprint, and has heading into the main race. That's going to be a much longer affair, but Willow really try to keep this position against Buckets, going even further off of the track.
Well, this is my first time in the combox for the F1 sprint, and I've got to say, first impressions, based on Christos Pilakoris' performance, that was absolutely incredible. Sliced and diced his way through the pack in the early laps, and just leapt out in front. Also, fantastic work from Guy finished second, and Mercedes with a 3-4. That's a very strong showing from the two of those guys.
It's going to be a good result for that of the Mercedes drivers. Obviously, the sprint race will give less points on a fair in comparison to the main starting race. We will be back shortly, though, as we do have some time to set up the main race order after that sprint race. And we also have a grid finder ad to show as well. Welcome back to the BUSR here again for Qatar. We've just wrapped up the sprint, which was a very, very messy and exciting affair. You got a few key points to go over from that one?
Yeah, it was very varied. Obviously, that's a product of the format having a reverse championship order sprint, but you can really tell that the intensity was quite high. You had such little time, such a little window to grab as many points as you possibly can. And for Chris as well, Chris Pilakouras, he absolutely made the most of that and sliced his way through the pack very early on and then gapped the field quite comfortably. It was an up and down race for a few people, to be honest. I mean, we got a great view of the battles throughout the midfield, especially I'll find his name, but it was one of the Saubers that was defending quite heavily. That threw up some brilliant racing, and I'm sure we're going to see a little bit more of that throughout the full length race.
Obviously, we're going to have a bit of a longer race with strategy definitely being a main occurrence to us. But as we look quickly to the standings from the previous round, Chris Pilakouras is in the lobby today with Luke Sawyer. But of the top five, they're the only two representing here today, which means Chris Pilakouras is going to look to extend the lead over Ben Mills, and Luke Sawyer in P3 is going to look forward to overtaking Ben Mills for P number 2. But looking a little bit further down the order, definitely got Geek, Newt and Oren Laddie, who are hopefully going to have some real good racing on their hands from the positions they're starting in.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see actually the contrast between the sprint and the Grand Prix in terms of having a more relevant starting position relevant to people's pace. I'm going to be interested to see exactly just how chaotic that might be in the opening laps, or maybe how anti-chaotic, and more how strategy will come into play, especially as the race goes on.
Oh, so you're mentioning strategy and tyre wear. It's going to be interesting to see how well Chris Pilakouras can do on Welcome back again to the BUSR. A few technical difficulties delaying us here, unfortunately. I'm still joined by Kipper, as we're going to go into the second race here today after that sprint qualifying. We've got an interesting order going to be laid out for us here tonight.
I really hope I'm not the bearer of bad luck when it comes to the streams. It's my first time here, and we've had a few technical difficulties. Hopefully it's not me. Yeah, so we're looking ahead to the Grand Prix. The grid was set by the sprint, so we've got Chris on pole. And I would like to see exactly how this is going to play out and how much strategy will come into this later in the race. I think the key to this race is to just keep your tyres under control. Don't go for the banzai moves so early because you don't want to risk wing damage. We saw a few clipped wings throughout the sprint race. You do not want that in the race because that will affect not only your pace and performance, but will also affect your tyre wear at the end of the day. Keeping on top of that will set you up nicely, and getting the strategy right, especially when it's difficult to overtake, is key to finishing well at Qatar.
Bring back Jeff and his no heroics into Sandevot, please. Love that guy. And moving on forward, though, yeah, it's going to be an interesting race here on our hands as we're going to go towards the grids in a short while's time. The lobby just being set up in its final preparation phases. Going to be a full race, half distance race into the night of Qatar. Chris Pilakouras on the pole position. Luke Sawyer in P number 2. The two main contenders in the championship standings then after this round, unless Luke Sawyer hits some difficulties, as we don't see Ben Mills, the current P2 standing driver, in this race tonight. So it's going to be a hell of a ride trying to see if Luke Sawyer can finally topple Chris Pillacoris' dominance and reign at the top. Haven't lost a single main race that they have competed in. Only race not going to them was Miami, where they didn't end up showing, and the sprint race in Melbourne, and that was arguably 5 times more chaotic than what we saw in Qatar.
It'll be also very interesting to watch the two racing bulls from their starting positions. They've got a little bit to build upon now because, as you said earlier on, they had a little bit of inconsistency recently, especially with some no-shows, some accidents, and they're in a good position now to sort of capitalise and rebuild on that going into this race, especially with a few of these top 5 drivers in the standings not here today.
And the big one is the Mercedes in P3 and P4. Mercedes currently down in P number 8 in the Constructors' Championship. Only 4 points behind McLaren, but a long way back of Alpine. But with neither Liam being in the race for Alpine, they have a huge chance to cut into that lead, especially if they can do good defensive drives, and they seem to have good pace in that sprint.
Yeah, altogether, I think we're in for a really good cracker of a race here. It might be a slow burner, as Qatar often can be.
But we will be going to the lights in the sky, and they go away as we start the race then. Chris Pillacoris tries to get off the line as cleanly as possible and will stand in the front. But further back, we got a couple of drivers going side by side as we look to New. He's going to be racing that Aston Martin of Assassin J through that corner, but both Mercedes right now keeping in formation 3 and 4. But Geek's now actually on the back of that Ferrari, really trying to get racy. Kind of a little bit hard as we do have a pink and white Racing Bulls and a pink and red Bull as well, so it makes it a little bit harder to follow which car's doing which. But it is Lally in that bright pink Racing Bulls down in P number 8, directly behind Geek. Both drivers lost out positions in qualifying due to the penalties that they had, but we do see already a few positions being changed as Willow getting really aggressive, going 3 wide at this part of the circuit as off goes the upper Ferrari. Apex Predator caused in contact off wide through sector number 2, but then looking back towards the front, Luke Sawyer still keeping directly on the back of Chris Pillacoris for now, 3 tenths behind. And looking further, there's a train of drivers behind the Mercedes pairing as Willow really trying to get racing. They've shown some good pace, but Geek is now down in P number 8, losing that position out as well. Lally's first race back in a while. Last time out at a sprint, Lally got their first ever podium in a main race and the sprint race win as well. But it's going to be interesting to see if Luke Sawyer actually wants to go for the race lead here, as he's got an opportunity on his hands. But from my understanding, Luke Sawyer typically likes being able to follow and trying to pry on that ERS management, as Willow up 6 positions from the main race, having got a tremendous start as Seth Martin is racing for Youssef, trying to make their way up the grid order. But they actually end up having an issue. They end up in the wall. The teammates colliding through turn number 1, putting Seth into the wall is not what you want to see. Meanwhile, in the meantime, Willow able to make the move into P number 7 over that of Lally, making a huge run here for the McLaren driver. He's racing against 2 Racing Bulls and against 2 Mercedes and trying to offset the difference, but right now he's stuck in the train behind those Mercedes with a couple of competitive drivers trying to find their way through.
This is exactly what I was saying earlier. You've got to keep it clean in the opening laps. We've seen Apex Predator go off. Hopefully he doesn't have damage. And of course the 2 Kick Saubers colliding with each other. I mean, it's one thing to have a spin or an accident, but it's another thing to have it with your teammate. That's absolutely not what they needed in the beginning of this race with 27 and a bit laps to go. Back to the mid-pack though. Things are getting quite dicey, and actually I'm quite interested here up front that Chris Pillacoris feels the need to defend against Luke Sawyer at this early point in the race.
Excited already derating on this second lap. Going to dive on the fake on the inside. He just wants to keep pushing Chris Spillacoris. He knows he's a pad player, but we're seeing actually that Nudes will find their way through that first one of the Mercedes. Both of them trying to play some games with each other, keeping in DRS. We have seen that Alpha was able to pull away significantly from Thomas in the sprint, but this time has kept him in DRS, potentially trying to play some team games to keep them as high up the grid order as they can. But now he's going to have to potentially drop Thomas behind, as we're seeing wind damage on Lally's car, making contact with the rear end of Willow on the exit of the start on end of sector number 2. He's going to struggle as that's his front left side. We saw it with Newt. You do release quite a bit of time, as especially that last sector, as we might have seen a bit more damage coming off of a car as well, unless it's a bit of a graphics coming out of the game. It's going to be unfortunate if Geek picked up damage as well. Both of these drivers got a really good sprint for themselves, getting quite far through the grid, but now they might be in a bit of turmoil as Willow is setting a rapid pace here behind Assassin J and really looking to try and go forward, as Newt's leading the pack of the cars, trying to charge past these Mercedes, and he's going to try and make it 2 Mercedes in 2 laps here then, as he comes back around to the start-finish straight, but heavily derating through this back end of the circuit, trying to gain as much battery power to use it down the entire length of this straight. It's quite long here at Qatar, so the move is going to be on for New into that corner and onto the podium for one of the potentially his best results of the season. New into P number 3.
Amazing showing from Newt so far. Had a little bit of a slow burner in the sprint, but he's really coming and showing his colours now onto the podium, fighting through this pack, and he's just, this is where you'd expect him to be now, putting those incidents aside. And again, really unfortunate for Lally, who's just picked up a penalty and also has that wing damage we saw earlier. That's really just not what you need. And look, there's a gap forming now as we're watching Willow attacking Assassin J.
What a move from Willow to send that one with that much confidence. Assassin J, not a shabby driver, consistent top 10 finishing driver. Willow, not been here for a while, and putting on a show with that overtake over Assassin J, finding it around the most difficult way around, and already putting himself into P6, starting all the way down the order. He's really trying to make a charge, and he's now directly behind both Mercedes, who, yes, are starting to fall a little bit back down the order, but they're keeping on with Newt at the moment, so he's not that far out of P3 contention, and he's trying to put a name for himself. So we do see Lally in the background coming into the pits with that damage, actually looking up and going sideways in as well, hopefully not speeding into the pit lane, as that will be really unfortunate for the rest of Lally's race. But Newt keeps in position for now, but Willow directly now behind Thomas. We've already seen how good they are overtaking Assassin J, then now behind that of Thomas, who has been holding up this pack quite effectively with the DRS from his teammate Alpha, as they fall 1.2 seconds now behind Newt through that first sector. Willow going to have an opportunity opening up across the rest of this lap then to try and make their move for P number 5.
Massive shame to see Lally have to peel into the pits this early in the race with that wing damage, but the 2 Mercedes here are holding up really strong. I think this teamwork is fantastic to see. It's got both their best interests at heart, and I think if they can keep this up throughout the rest of the race, just holding these guys at bay and keeping up the consistent pace, I think they could be in for a really good result here.
Willow might have a message against that. Around the outside, it's going to be so difficult through the back end of this sector, but you see how close he is. He's going to tuck on in and then through the remaining part of this final sector as it gets really tight and really hard to follow. And Alpha picks up a penalty. So this strategy of keeping it together is going to start getting a little bit harder. We've seen Assassin J also going really far wide, but Willow is going to open up the exit of this corner, straight line it out as much as possible, get as much speed. Going to lose out a little bit on that slipstream, but we do know that's a little bit weaker in this game, but that won't be enough this time around. Seems like Willow gonna have to try and make it move in the corner, and he gets a huge gain on the braking zone as well, with the exit speed going to be a little bit compromised, as you're seeing him derating so much in comparison to the drivers around him. He's really trying to push now, as he's now starting to eke out a bit of time to Newt, but this time not losing as much time, and the move down the inside actually nearly on as well, but actually does get out muscled out by Thomas this time around. And now trying to make a second nosedive with a lockup as well. Isn't able to make it work there and slides on the corner exit as well. Thomas making this car really, really wide like we saw from Youssef, but unlike Youssef, is keeping it a hell of a lot cleaner. No penalties to their name at the moment and keeping it nice and smart on track and trying to utilize the DRS from their teammate to the gains as much as they can.
Outstanding from Willow. Amazing aggression. We saw the overtake on Assassin J round the outside. Just found grip where you didn't expect it. And now he's all over the back of Thomas. Borderline desperate, going for the moves down, diving down into turn of, what is that, 6? Yeah, to the hairpin at turn 6. It looks like it's a slight play of desperation, but the pace is looking fantastic, and I think he can definitely clear both these Mercs and possibly even Newt up ahead.
Luke Sawyer has made the move past Chris's Bilikoris. We have a new race leader on lap number 7, potentially finding that tyre difference that we have mentioned all of tonight. Being on the controller for Chris's Bilikoris might finally show up as an issue for him today. Not been an issue all season, but Qatar might be the kryptonite to that effectivity. Luke Sawyer looking really strong in this race at the moment as we do go back. Willow is directly on the back of Thomas yet again, 2 tenths behind, potentially looking for an opportunity here. This is where he made the epic move on Assassin J, but Thomas keeps it planted in the middle of the circuit, doesn't open up the room for him there. Now through this sector, it's really hard to find the momentum, but you can sometimes find something if you get a good enough exit speed here. You do see Willow setting up for that move, but it's going to be so hard coming through here. And again, we see that Willow, always so low on energy deployment, is really started to hamper his ability to make an overtake. He might need to back off for a lap, but we've seen that this train is still here. They're keeping up with Newt, and Assassin J and Geek are still eager behind, and Willow doesn't want to open up an opportunity for them to get offensive either.
I really like this aggression from Willow, but he really has to be careful about his tyres here. Being so aggressive, being so sort of dicey, tucked up behind Thomas, and the dirty air is really going to affect his tyres going forward. Like you said, he may need to just peel back a little bit, just regain that battery and just go for one clean attack move, maybe down the straight, although that's quite difficult when the Mercedes are helping each other with DRS assistance. But he's just got to find one clean place he can really take advantage and just get the move done, and then he can move on. Meanwhile, in the pits,
Cybericious into the pit lane. One of the potential first goers who are actually going to be pitting for a 2-stop strategy is an option here tonight at Qatar. Always super high tire degradation. We always see in real life that we see the one Mercedes going around on top of the curb. They spin it off, entering sector number 2, and Alpha will be out of the top 7 prey, slipping down the order, actually getting overtaken by Youssef as well. He tried to keep pace with Newt so hard, but now he's opened up a void before Thomas, who won't have slipstream up towards Newt, and this might be Willow's opportunity to strike. We're coming around to the back end of the circuit as Geek further down picks up a penalty, keeping up as well, but Willow actually falling out of DRS range as we reached through the detection point a little bit ago. He might still get DRS on his hands, and Assassin J all over the back of him. He's going to come alongside and return the favor to Willow on the opportunity that we thought that Willow might attack Thomas instead. Actually thwarts himself and he falls down the order. Maybe that tire where you mentioned is starting to come back against him.
That was, what a change around. We saw Alpha spin out, and that was the beginning of the breakdown of the Mercedes defensive regime, and that has mixed things right up. Assassin J took full advantage of that. I believe Willow might have actually disconnected by the looks of his car. I think I saw a little message down the start-finish straight that he'd just disconnected from the session. Eek also with a 3-second penalty, he's having to just follow through the middle sector for now. Hopefully he'll take advantage as well, but massive shame for the Mercedes there. Thomas, he's lucky to break away from DRS on that previous occasion, but he's going to be under some serious pressure now from Assassin J.
Assassin J, a competent new driver on the order. We've seen a lot of good results from Assassin J when other people are struggling. We've also seen good results from their teammate Ginker as well. Those Ferrari duos quite nippy at certain tracks. Not to say having the same level of performance across the entire calendar, but both drivers able to find something. But Guy's going to be all over the back of Willow, as you said, looking like a completely different driver, potentially under AI control due to disconnecting from the lobby. Hopefully able to get back in as soon as possible, not lose too much time. But this is going to be a huge, unfortunate turn of events for them then in this race, as we do see the standard AI defensive line coming out there. We look back towards Alpha, trying to get back through the grid a little bit. Going to attack that of Yusuf to get back into P number 8, but this is not where they should have been contending for after how good the start of this race has been in defense.
Oh, much easier to get past Yusuf that time around, but it's unfortunate Alpha has to do that to begin with. I don't know if there was any contact. I don't think it was. I think, as you said, he just spun off the curb there in the middle sector, and that was really unfortunate. Broke down that defense. Meanwhile, Chris's Pilakoris is still on the back of Luke Sawyer.
Yeah, keeping attention with Luke Sawyer, which is typically not the way round we're used to saying it for Chris's Pilakoris. Always the driver out in front or leading the way in terms of finishing position. Obviously, the main race where we nearly saw Chris's Pilakoris faltering off a little bit was Zandvoort. Not able to race for the lead. Ben Mills and Alex Lansdale that day were the fastest drivers clearly off the field, but both drivers picked up penalties in the pit lane, which gave Chris's Pilakoris the chance to still come ahead as the winner. He knows what he needs to do and he maximized the results there. But Thomas now we're going to be promoting into P number 3 as Newt dives into the pit lane. First of the main leaders coming into pit row then. Typically the main result we do see from that of Newt, but on lap 11 this is really into the race and potentially still leading to the 2-stop.
Be interesting to see how those strategies diverge between the 1 and 2 stop. Personally, I was always a fan of the 1 stop because I tended to be, when I raced, relatively okay with the tyre wear. But I'd like to see how this aggressive strategy will play out for Newt. It was Newt who pitted. Yeah, who will then seek the P3 that he currently had for pitting, maybe even sniffing at the top 2, potentially.
Hopefully it goes on a better affair for Newt than it did last time out at Hungary. Having huge issues at Hungary with traffic, taking on damage, but they did not need to gather, and really affecting their race result. We're seeing now a bunch of penalties, though, across the entire field. 3 seconds for Assassin J and Geek, 3 seconds for Alpha, 9 for GMT, followed by 3, 9, 3, and 6 down for Seth down in P15. It's going to be a bit of a game of keeping it clean and on track limits, and right now, Thomas is doing an amazing job at that. We see the second Red Bull now into pit lane of Geek. He's going to join Newt potentially on the same strategy option, and Assassin J does actually get past Thomas on this lap around through sector number 1. He's still going to have to fight for it though, Thomas giving him a little bit of an effort back around, but nice little move for Assassin J, finally finding their way past the absolute obstacle that Thomas has been so far.
I'm glad you mentioned penalties, actually, because Willow, I think, has returned. And with Assassin J picking up a penalty just a couple laps ago, and Geek already having one as well, Willow is back in contention, absolutely, within this pack. We're watching Thomas just stick into the back of Assassin J. Of course, without a penalty, Thomas is in a pretty decent position himself. He's had a pretty quiet race. He hasn't actually fallen too far back, especially when the Mercedes defensive regime broke down in the end, but he's having a good go so far around the circuit.
Thomas obviously having a good affair. Luke Sawyer having his best opportunity at a racer win of this season as well. A couple of drivers having a good race here today as Willow as well. Yusuf in the top 10 points at the moment, but also we've got pit window strategies all coming into the play of it, as we do see that we see another driver into the pit lane further up ahead, and that is going to be Luke Sawyer then, taking the pit lane decisively before Chris's Pilakoris, aiming for that undercut over that Aston Martin, as Assassin J actually gets re-overtaken by Thomas down the inside, but he will hold the inside line through corner number 2. But an amazing move again from Thomas. We are being given an absolute display of overtaking talent here today in the BUSR. All of these drivers bringing out their A-game in racecraft and delivering absolutely amazing moves with confidence here today. Though some of them with a couple of penalties, it has still been a splendid affair. And we're seeing Willow actually on the charge already. Down to 1.8 seconds, he is charging down this lead.
I think the effect of having such a long DRS zone, but such a little effect from it, means you do end up going into turn 1 generally side by side with your rival, and that makes for some brilliant battles up through the first 2, 3, 4 corners as you switch from left to right. Fantastic stuff again, watching Thomas and Assassin J through the sector lap after lap. I don't think with this gap of 8/10 it will happen again next lap, but we could. You never know.
Because Pinnacle is into the pit lane, then that's your race leader gonna get undercut potentially by Luke Sawyer, but it's going to be interesting to see how effective that is, as Luke Sawyer does find themselves a little bit tucked into a little bit of traffic behind Alpha at the moment. 1.6 seconds back, so not directly in the traffic. As they're coming down the main straight, you see Luke Sawyer there. He is going to fly on by through the first corner, but Christos Pilakoris will crucially still be ahead of that Kick Sauber.
Brilliant play from Luke Sawyer there. Just kept himself in play, kept himself ahead of Christos Pilakoris, and of course with the potential tyre offset, should be able to keep the lead and extend throughout the stint if, of course, the pad tyre wear comes to fruition.
Christos Pilakoris roughly on the DRS gap at the moment. It seems like Luke Sawyer was quicker on that undercut strategy, but now held up by Alpha will bring Christos Pilakoris back into DRS effectively. Maybe a little bit frustrated with this, but should shortly be able to dispatch that of Alpha here, as they are directly on the back already with fresher tyres, and obviously being that of a higher standing driver, you'd be a little bit questioning if they don't get past on the first time of asking, as now we see one of the Saubers into the pit lane, but Thomas, Willow and Assassin J going a bit longer, still yet to hit. Rounding on.
My bad.
Yeah. Luke Sawyer gonna go on to the back end of that of Alpha, pull around a long way around and make that move stick. Now it's going to be interesting though, can Christos Pilakoris get past anywhere near as easily? As they try, but Alpha does seem to get out of the way through corner number 2. Christos Pilakoris pushing them all the way to the edge of the racetrack, though on the exit. Alpha potentially not the happiest about how Christos Pilakoris makes that move onto them, but Christos Pilakoris is seeing just how much they use the track limits all the way to the edge of the corner, all the way tucked back in again. They're going to be pushed now behind Luke Sawyer. They got 11 seconds in front of them with no one else there. Clear road for them ahead, as Willow did actually end up pitting on that previous lap. So Assassin J and Thomas lead the way. Their last 2 leaders to pit, with Alpha in this pack as well. But these 2 drivers then racing for P3 on circuit will be your provisional race leaders. And with the pit stops going through, this might be the race to the finish.
I'm stuck here watching the Red Bull of Newt, who we saw was P3 before the pit cycle began. He's currently stuck behind the Haas in P7 of GMT. He needs to dispatch that Haas pretty quickly. He's got 9 seconds of penalties, by the way, so he's going to have to somehow find a way around that Haas, who's making his car as wide as possible, as you see there on the inside. He's going to have to try and make this place up down the straight.
Gonna open that
Tucks in.
DRS flat. It's gonna get tucked in, and he's gonna pull a long slide. You will see that Haskett a bit of extra slipstream from the Sauber being on the inside. It is crucial, but you need to make sure you don't make contact. Luckily, with the current regulation of wings, you see a lot less punctures. If we went back to 2019 era front wings, Newt, my friend, that might have been a little bit risky, but it's nice to see that they get past Youssef just as quickly afterwards. As we look further down, though, Willow in P number 9 is already 3 tenths behind Geek for P number 8. He's looking really racy now that he's returned to the lobby. With a later pit stop than Geek, he's going to have much fresher tires on his car. Geek already struggling with derating again on the exit of that corner as well. Willow in a really racy position. He doesn't need to make this overtake on circuit to get past Geek, but he will want to make this overtake to make sure he's still in the race against Thomas. He has also undercut Assassin J. Still came out in front of Lally as well. He's in a really good position at the moment. He's going to have a good tire delta compared to Assassin J. Still a little bit of a negative, but only by a 1 lap difference. So if he gets past Geek here and lays down the pace, he might be able to undercut Thomas and get himself into provisional P4 behind New after we see Youssef at GMT pit and Alpha as well.
Fantastic stuff by Willow. Did not let that disconnection earlier in the race affect him, and now he's all over the back of the Red Bull of Geek, approaching turn 1. Meanwhile, that was Thomas was in the pits, so these guys have absolutely cleared the Mercedes for provisional P4, and now they are racing for podium. No, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong Red Bull. Willow now ahead of Geek for P4.
Assassin J makes their move onto Lally as well. Everyone behind the top 4, all with 3-second penalties down to P number 9. Alpha way off of the back of Thomas at this point in the race due to the mistake earlier on. But it's going to be a bit of a train behind Assassin J and a huge battle for these remaining points, higher points paying positions. But now the interest is on. Can Willow charge down Newt? He's already took a couple attempts out of Newt already. Newt, being one of the earliest drivers to pit, will already be on a little bit of tire wear, whereas Willow is pitting so much later, has a fresh set of tires on their hand, and will now chase down Newt. The only issue for Willow is there much more that he can chase down after getting onto the podium.
Luke Sawyer is very close to Chris Pilakoris, despite the fact that Chris Pilakoris just set the fastest lap of the race. So those two are striding out in front now, but the RB is right under the rear wing of the Aston Martin. Ooh, Willow steals the fastest lap just there, showing his tyre offset is proving him good as he's chasing down Newt for P3.
Yeah, Chris Pilakoris got past Luke Sawyer some point on the circuit. We didn't see it happen on the camera, unfortunately, but Chris Pilakoris back in the race lead where he feels like he probably belongs. But Luke Sawyer, this is the best race we've seen against Chris Pilakoris from him, and he always comes alive in the middle of stints. Typically, that's where we see he starts to ramp his pace up just a little bit. But it's good to see from Willow, a driver we don't get to see very often, laying down that pace, able to keep and match up with the 2 race leaders who've been a bit of a world their own and still able to put on a fastest lap that matches their pace. Meanwhile, he's now catching up ever so quickly to Newt. 1.5 seconds. He's took another 5 tenths in that previous sector alone through sector number 1. Now he's going to get really racy behind. Newt's also got a little bit of traffic coming through into sector number 3, so he's going to try and cut down that gap as much as possible, but it's going to be maybe a little bit too much of a stretch to get into DRS on this occasion unless Newt gets really held up for the back end here. But as we've already passed the DRS detection point, he won't get it coming onto the straight, but he's gaining and he's gaining. He's going to be really onto the back of Newton anytime soon now. As we look further down, GMT gets past Youssef as well, but both of these drivers are going to want to get this traffic out of the way. As we see in the background, we're seeing Thomas now trying to get racy against Lally. As he comes around the outside, Lally will fall again, another position after that damage early on. Maybe they have a bit more to the car than just the front wing damage.
I was going to point out that the Mercedes they've lost out a lot. They was fourth and fifth earlier in the race. They were down to 8th and 9th, but Thomas, on this slightly different strategy, pitting so late, has actually given himself a brilliant offset in terms of tyre wear and tyre performance to the cars around him. I'm interested to see just how much he can cut up the pack as the race progresses, and the guys who pitted earlier are now running out of tyre life. Meanwhile, Willow has taken more chunks out of Newt's gap in P3.
He won't have to deal with that Sauber as traffic, but he's right there on the back of that Sauber already. Assassin J has picked up another 3-second penalty, so they're going to be offset to everyone else for that battle for 5th by having another 3 seconds to the name at the moment. Everyone else sat on 3 seconds of time penalties. Willow directly behind this kick Sauber. He's going to potentially have a huge opportunity to slingshot themselves down this straight. DRS is going to be of assistance. They're going to get into that slipstream, but we look forward. Luke Sawyer re-overtakes Christos Pilakoris. The race for P1 is most certainly on here in Qatar, as these two drivers are giving us a long barn burner race that maybe will keep growing into the final stages of it now. About 10 laps remaining to go. That Sauber ends up spinning out of the way of Willow. Potentially contact what we might not have seen. Hopefully not for Willow. Hopefully his car is still completely polished and clean, as we see Lally coming in for a second pit stop, maybe having a bit of an issue, maybe getting caught up, and unfortunately, if that is the case, that is going to be horrendous for their race. Hopefully it is a 2-stop strategy and they can make it work for themselves instead. But back onto Willow, onto the back of that amazingly stunning white and red liveried Red Bull car. He really does not care about how pretty you look on circuit, Newt. All he cares is for your podium position. It might be one of your best results of the season, but Willow wants to make it one of his only results of the season, and he wants to prove why he should be here more often, and he wants to prove himself. He knows he hasn't been here for a while. He knows this was one of his only opportunities this season due to availability issues, so he wants to make his stamp on the season. He wants to make his mark, so he's going to tuck on in. But another driver who doesn't need to make their mark is Christos Pilakoris, remaking that move for P1. But on that straight, Willow is going to get past Newt into the braking zone as well. He will progress to the podium. Newt, do you have anything to respond for, or are those tires starting to die and fall away?
I suspect those tyres have really seen the best days. There you can see on the graphic there's 4 whole laps of difference between them, and Qatar, 4 laps is a lot of tyre wear. There's a lot of deg involved. I think Willow might be running away with this one for P3 for now. He's already broken the DRS away from him. So it's going to be up to the leading pair now to provide the closest battle on track.
Assassin J also behind Thomas, who got into P6. Obviously, medium tyres on Thomas, Assassin J, and Alpha. Gonna be interesting to see how their race goes with that strategy difference coming out from them to the end. The top 4 all on hard tyres, but Newt might have to pit again with just how early they pit into this race. Willow, Luke, and Chris Ispilakoris. All on a one-stop strategy with how late they pit, but will Luke Sawyer have a response to Christos Pilakoris on that previous lap? He will open up that DRS, but he's quite far back this time around. Still 5 tenths halfway down the straight, not close enough to really put on the pressure. It seems to take a couple of laps to really build up that opportunity.
Huge lap time once again from Willow. Fastest man on circuit, really putting those tyres to good use. I'm really impressed by him so far. And that's Seth Martin's disqualified. Way too many penalties. It had accumulated over 40 seconds of penalties for various infringements, from track limits to ignoring blue flags. And the Sauber driver has had a pretty horrible race so far today.
Horrendous affair for that driver of Seth Martin, stepping into this race from lobby number 2 to help fill out the grid a little bit and having a very poor showing. But on the move from Lally onto Youssef, he's going to have a dive down the inside, 1 position outside of the points, but then a huge gap forwards. 7 a gap after he gets past Apex, which you're going to potentially see soon, and then GMT with his pace that he's displaying right now, there's 7 seconds and then 18 seconds back to the gap for the top 7 fight that he was contesting in, but he already put himself on the inside of that Ferrari to try and make that move, but he's going to be forced round the outside, so he's going to have to try and outbrake the Ferrari again and send it round the outside. It's a long way around these corners here at Qatar.
Wow.
And again, we get another display of racecraft here at Qatar. But again, as we see another display of racecraft, we get another off-screen overtake between the two leaders. Luke Sawyer now back into the lead.
Fantastic stuff from Lally, but remember what I said earlier about the damage in the early half of the race. He's now paying the price for that, having to fight his way up through the pack once again with this sort of patchwork together two-stop strategy. It's going to prove very costly for him, and that, of course, like I said, it stems all the way back to that very early damage he had, having to pit prematurely.
As we look towards this battle for P4 as it's starting to grow on, the main thing that Newt has on hand is a lack of penalty, but they are getting caught by Thomas, Geek, Assassin J, this train, this quadra of cars, all lapping faster than Newt at the moment, but they all have penalties to their names. So that is the one benefiting factor for the rest of this race for Newt. They were in the dying stages now, so these drivers need to get a move on if they wanted to put in a significant performance against Newt. But Willow is making a charge into the gap against Luke Sawyer and Chris Bilakos. The battle between the two of them holding themselves up just a little bit, and Willow setting yet another fastest lap on that previous lap down to 8 seconds. It was over 9.5 seconds, but it's not necessarily quick enough to gain as we only have a few laps left. But Geek again going to be behind that of Thomas, but derating down the straight will mean they won't have the chance this time around to make that overtake.
The twilight moments of this race, seeing a very close battle unfolding here for P4 as Newt's falling back on those old tyres. Now, if you're in Newt's boots, you've got to keep in mind the penalty situation. You've got to keep your head. You've got to keep cool. You've got to not grab a penalty for yourself. Oh, and the race leader grabs one.
Luke Sawyer in their race against Chris Pilakouris in potentially their best opportunity all season long. It's definitely the best they've had all season up to this far. They end up picking what is potentially going to be a critical race going penalty. 3 seconds for pushing too hard on the track limits. It's going to be do or die on for now for Luke Sawyer to the end of this race, as Geek ends up spinning and dropping down the order as well. Chris Pilakouris has been gifted an opportunity to have an easy way to the end. They might just choose to not push on track limits and sit behind, but we've seen from Chris Pilakouris before, they don't always do this. They like winning on track as well, even if they're sitting behind a penalty, to just prove their pure dominance over this season here at the BUSR. They always sound calm and collected, but they always deliver time and time again. 7/10 is the gap at the moment, but it's going to be 2.3 seconds in the reverse with the penalties.
I really can't believe this. I was just talking about the importance of not having a penalty when the guys around you do, and Luke Sawyer has just costed himself potentially the race victory with a 3-second penalty, and now it's up to Chris Pilakouris on what to do. Do you overtake or do you not? Geek just coming out the pit lane, he had a spin as well. That's really unfortunate stuff from Geek. He was in the battle for P4, tucked up behind Thomas with Assassin J. He's had to pit one last time in this race. Let's put him right down in the order.
Thomas is directly on the back of Newt, but we see a flurry of penalties coming out. Thomas picks up 1, Alpha picks up 1. They're both up to 6 seconds now. The train behind Newt looking a little bit less fierce now in terms of numbers, but Thomas isn't looking any less fair in terms of himself. He's got 6 seconds though, but he'll have to pull over Newt. So Newt just needs to keep it calm. You've mentioned it before. This race is now coming down to an affair of penalties. Keeping it calm, and avoiding penalties is really turning out to be the winning strategy, as we see Assassin J diving for the pit lane. Thomas will try and make the move around the outside. That he will do, but Newt's going to keep the nose in for now.
Wow.
But that nose isn't going to be enough to make it stick, and it's enough of phenomenal news coming out from Thomas. But the thing is, Newt's on really old hards. Thomas is on mediums. Assassin J was on mediums. Laddie was on mediums. Geek was on mediums. All of these drivers switched from mediums to mediums. They had to pit again.
Oh, that's unbelievable strategy. Yeah. How have they done that? They need to get in the pits again and just fix that up. Newt will be taking advantage here without the penalties. Now, something interesting I've just picked up is that Christos Pilakouras could pick and choose his battles here, in that if he continues to fight Sawyer, Willow could come into play here, having not have a penalty. And if Christos Pilakouras and Luke Sawyer end up battling too hard, Luke Sawyer could end up P3 in this race. So Christos Pilakouras chooses to take the fight to Luke Sawyer at the top, could deny his rival another 3 points, or however many points it is between second and third place in the results. And he repasses on track just as I say that. Fantastic move down into turn 1 around the outside.
Makes an amazing move around the outside, as you mentioned. But BUSR uses their own point system. It's 2 points for fastest lap. It's 2 points for pole, and for the second fastest and for position 2 you also get points, and we also do interpole during qualifying as well for a further 1 point. Now the issue is, in the main standings, it's not only the traditional points difference, it's a 10-point difference for P1 down to P number 2, as it's 50 points, 40 points, 35 for third, 30 for fourth, 26 for sixth, and then 22 for 7th, 15 for 8th, 12 for 9th, 9 for 10th, 7 for 11th, 5 for 12th, 3 for 13th, 2 for 14th, and 1 for 15th instead. So all of the drivers down to P number 15 will be getting points here in the BUSR structure instead. The main thing is, the higher you go, the more significant the point gap becomes, and it grows really, really quickly.
Thank you for filling me in on that. It's some vital information to learn as we go into the dying moments of the race here. 2 laps to go.
2 laps remaining on the count, and Luke Sawyer still has that penalty to their name. Christos Pilakouras hasn't responded in kind, hasn't been able to, has kept it nice and clean, like we always see from Christos Pilakouras. Luke Sawyer's best chance of a win is currently outside of their hands. No matter what they do, it's nearly impossible to go grab a 3-second lead, especially not already being in the race lead at the moment. So unless something hits Christos Pilakouras now, or they make a mistake and pick up a penalty, they are completely in the hands of Christos Pilakouras to define the end of this race. He's still going to race Christos Pilakouras to the line. He will still want to say that he won on track. It will be a nice moment for him either way to get yet another penalty on what has been one of Luke Sawyer's best seasons in the BUSR, but it's still so far not enough to challenge the reigning champion and the current championship leader of Christos Pilakouras. Their dominance keeps staying the same as we head towards one final lap for Christos Pilakouras. Laddie picks up one more 3-second penalty, which potentially is now going to put Geek into the race for P number 8. But Luke Sawyer weaving down the straight, trying to gain one final time. That is their best overtaking opportunity gone for the final time. They're going to have to make it in an unconventional spot now that that straight is gone by. Christos Pilakouras using the entire width of the circuit to go left and then go right once again as we're rounding around this motor park circuit that's been turned into a F1 race calendar as of lately. The 2 main contenders in the championship have bowed it out tonight in a world of their own. Willow out of the fray due to starting so far down the grid in the main race, potentially could have joined this battle battle for P number 1 and 2. Their pace has been rapid, but they haven't been a part of it. These two have been in a class of their own, on a strategy of their own, and they are now got one sector to see if Luke Sawyer can make anything work. He's gonna have to be giving it its all of the beans for one final time. How much tire life do you have? Do you have anything left to give, Luke Sawyer? Or will you let it go dead into the night? Will it be silenced by this 3-second penalty? As we round the final corner, your king will sit atop of the throne once again in the BUSR. He keeps doing it. He does not falter in races. Meanwhile, Luke Sawyer will come through in second. Willow will have a tremendous result and finish in P number 3 as we see Geek off of the circuit through. No, it's actually one of the racing balls. It's Lally off of the road through sector number 2. He's gonna slip down the order to P number 9 as Newt will come through P4. He will save his position through not getting penalties. Assassin J will then be way behind Thomas in P number 6. He had to pit again. He went mediums into mediums, whereas Thomas went mediums into hards, so he was forced to pit again. Alpha in P7. Geek will get a bit of a recovery into P number 8, and again, the driver who started with him in the race, somehow, after both having issues, will finish next to him again and get promoted due to less penalties. And then to round out the finishing on track drivers will be Apex Predator, but Youssef will promote into P10 as he has nowhere near as many penalties. And then a bit of a gap between that and Fred Monster and GMT, both drivers with huge flurries of penalties. But it's critically Chris's Pillar Chorus. He will stand on top of that podium once again.
Absolutely outstanding. A commendable effort from the leading pair. But Chris's Pilakoris delivers once again in the BUSR. Like you said, the king upon the throne. An incredible run this season. And just at the end there, the penalty for Luke Sawyer really costed him dearly. And he'll have to settle for P2 this time round.
It's going to be a bit of a moment for us now, as we will try and get top 3 interviews like we usually do here at the BUSR, and we've been gifted a delight here today for this race, as we saw some of the best overtakes I think we've seen all season.
Yeah, I mean, as our very wide circuit was a motorbike circuit, of course, from 2004. It's a very wide circuit, and that proved brilliant, a very useful tool tonight for drivers to be making unorthodox moves. We've seen around the outside, we've seen down the inside, we've seen passes on the straights, and we've seen passes very late in the corners, and all kinds of chaos throughout the sprint, and that's diverged into a very tactical and very aggressive race from many drivers, including Willow. I think I have to point out, had some brilliant decisive overtakes, especially early on in that Grand Prix.
We will be moments away from the interviews starting on. Typically, we do start with Chris's Pillar Chorus as in the box, but it'd be interesting to see which way around we get it here today. The drivers seem to be ready and waiting, but we will get Willow into the box first today.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Willow?
Well, that's a recovery and a half, isn't it, really? I mean, after the chaos of the sprint at the start, I'm annoyed at that, but also very, very happy. To come from 14th to 3rd, but it just makes me so frustrated.
Obviously having the pace to race Chris's and Luke. Do you think if you did start at the front, you'd been in that race all race long?
I think based off the final stint, yes, but also even with the disconnect that I had as well mid-race, it cost me a couple seconds on top of that. So I think I could have been with them even without that, which makes it even more frustrating. But no, it's always a bit different when you're fighting people that are closer to your pace or even faster than you. So whether I'd have been able to actually beat them is a different question, but certainly keep with them, I think so.
Obviously, you had that disconnect crucially in the middle of your battle. In the end, it didn't end up too bad, as your overcut ended up working so effectively compared to some of them.
Yeah. I've never had this kind of bad connection before, so it really surprised me. Obviously, it took a bit to come back in, but even with that, I'm quite happy with where I've ended up.
With being out of position on the start, like you said, you should have been a little bit higher up than that. Did you always plan to overcut and grab that tyre offset to try and better your rivals that way rather than the on-track fight?
I mean, my plan was to pit around lap 12, 13. When I saw the tyre wear, I'm just like, right, well, I should extend this as much as I can. So just to see what kind of advantage I can get, and it worked out. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was always my plan, but then again, you never really have a set plan when you go into a race. You just have a kind of a window where you can make the most of it, and I think I certainly did make the most of what I had today.
Well, it's been great to see your drive through the field, and that overtake on that Ferrari is gotta be one of the best overtakes of the season. That was absolutely phenomenal. It's been great having you tonight, and
Thank
have a
you.
good luck for the rest of the season if you do end up showing again.
Well, I plan to hopefully turn up to a couple more, but we'll see. We'll see. Thank you.
And then the next driver in going through race results would mean that we will be getting Luke Sawyer into the commentary box. How are you doing tonight, Luke Sawyer?
Bittersweet, I think is the way of putting it. I can't believe that I've just fumbled that with the penalty. That might be the only chance that I get to get a win. At least for this season, it is.
Clearly the best chance you got so far, but keeps your hopes up. There is 2 more rounds that you potentially can fight against Chris's again.
Well, one, because I'm not here for the last one, because I'm off to do some real car racing. Somehow I've frauded that one. Anyways, yeah, that's probably the best chance I'm ever going to get, at least with Chris around. So, hey ho, I am pure bottle job. Jokes aside, though, it was a good race and I enjoyed it. It was nice to actually have a good fight with Chris, but what more can I do?
It's been nice to see you keep building on your results across this season, though. Obviously, with Ben Mill stepping out, that does promote you into P2. How are you feeling about that at the moment?
Well, I think that's the goal, is to try and get P2. If not, P3 is like an absolute worst. I reckon if I can stay in that vicinity, I'm happy. There's no chance of catching Chris. I'm pretty sure it's close to mathematically impossible now. So get out the championship graphics next round. But I don't know. I've got Brazil left, which is a fairly alright track. I don't know how it is for the likes of Ben and Dale. So fingers crossed I managed to muster a P2 in the championship, which if so, I might as well retire on the spot. Be like in Keke Rosberg or something like that, where I just get like one good result and I somehow get a good championship result. Anyways.
Can I just ask, with you said you have one more opportunity left in this season that comes at Brazil. Have you, from today's racing, because you have a brilliant close battle with Christos Pilakouras all the way through this race, how much have you learned about Christos Pilakouras and his racing style, and how much can you apply going forward?
The guy's an alien, good luck. That's my advice.
I mean, he does it on a controller. No clue how.
Yeah, pad traction for days. You can keep bugging him about it, but name one time he said it's false. He's good to race with. He's incredibly consistent, but I feel like if you just get him in the right spot, which I guess you could class today as that, where you can keep good pace with him, you're consistent and you feel comfy, then you can definitely take it to him. But it almost feels like a once in a blue moon situation. But it feels like most of the time he's always got another 4 or 5 tenths up his sleeve just whenever he feels like it.
I see. It's been good to have you in the commentary booth. You got any final thoughts?
GG's to Chris. One of these days somebody will actually stop him. I'm happy with the result. Fair play to Willow as well. That last stint was insane. Me and Chris were we were keeping an eye on him whilst we were up in front, and he took like 7 seconds off us in that last stint. It was ridiculous. So fair play to Willow. It was nice seeing him race again. Hopefully Brazil can be a good one, a good send off for my season at least. And yeah, all shall be well. Hopefully we get P2 in the standings. If not, then it is what it is.
Well, good luck to you for your final race, and have a good evening as well. Thank you for putting on a display at the front tonight.
Thank you very much. Take care, you lot.
And that will leave us with our race winner, Chris Spilokoris, to come into the booth. How are you doing this evening?
Fantastic. Couldn't ask for anything more, to be honest. I mean, I despise this track, so to come home with a sprint win and a win in the main race is more than I could have asked for.
Firstly, starting with that sprint, how the hell did you find all of the positions basically in 2 or 3 laps?
I mean, honest, I just don't know. I mean, my start was great. I already overtook 3 cars before even turn 1. And I think everyone just kind of had deja vu from Melbourne, so they just braked so early for turn 1 that I kind of just dive bombed everyone. But I didn't brake it late. I just broke on their normal braking point and gained 5 more positions. And then yeah, everyone ahead was just side by side, and I could just capitalize on better exits and more entry speed. So yeah, after lap 1, I think I was P3 or something, which is crazy because I started last. But in fairness, the sprint I actually went for a very low wing setup because I didn't think I would be second by lap 3 or first. Where was I? And after cleaner, I was actually pretty slow. Luke was catching me up, so that was kind of a test race, so I could see what I could do different from the main race. So I went for higher wings, which was clearly better. I think the race pace was still a bit lacking, especially Willow. If he didn't have that terrible sprint, I think he could have definitely won today because his pace on the hard was crazy. But yeah, I've said it multiple times, this is by far one of my worst tracks, so to come basically home with maximum points is brilliant.
Obviously, going into the main race, how did you find the battle with Luke Sawyer all race long?
It was pretty fun. We had very similar pace, so it was just all about who wanted to have the cleaner and who wanted to stay behind. I actually was on none so many times when I was in P1 because I wanted to stay behind and save some fuel because I underfueled a bit for the main race. My fuel on the sprint was actually neutral, it always stayed the same. So I thought I could get away with not underfueling the car, but fueling right on lap count. But turns out on clean air on the main race, I was just losing so much fuel, so I just had to stay back and lift and coast. And then yeah, we were actually chilling, we were in the VC and saying we have a huge gap, and then we see Willow just climbing up so quickly, and we was have to get a move on now. So yeah, it was a very fun fight though, a lot of just clean racing. But on this track, you really just can't do that much. There's no heartbreaking zones, and third year is just terrible. So yeah, I mean, at the end, the 3 seconds obviously made it more chill, but I still wanted to get the win on track. So yeah, it was a bit more satisfying to do it on the road rather than just time penalties.
Any questions from you, Kipper?
No, I think that was absolutely fantastic. Did you see yourself, looking back to the beginning of the season, did you see yourself having this many wins accrued? You're on the doorstep of the championship now.
I mean, I don't like being one with ego, but I mean, judging from last season, I guess I had the confidence to back it up again since I won every race last season, bar 2, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tracks, it's all been very close this season. I just think in the race, I'm just able to keep it more clean on warnings and stuff, or just tire wear, because Zandvoort I won because of penalties. Hungary I won because I managed to keep the one stop alive. This right here was just because I somehow kept my nose clean again. So it's not pace disparity, to be honest. It's just more about racecraft. So yeah, I mean, last season was different as well because I had Josh fighting me and not really Ben and Luke this season. if Willow raced more consistently, he would have probably been up there as well. But yeah, it's like you said, it's just kind of doing my best, and even on tracks like Qatar, where it's not one of my best ones, it's still a very good, not very good result. It's the best result you could get. So yeah, I think I just need 31 points now just to secure mathematically. So I'm just gonna go to those last 2 races and just have fun and just enjoy it.
Enjoy it, you
Well,
will.
Obviously, good luck for the remaining of the season. Thanks for the interview, and have a nice evening and good luck.
Likewise, guys. Good night.
Obviously, that will be it for us from BUSR. Any closing words from you today, Kipper?
Well, Torium, I think that was a pretty fantastic weekend, well, quote unquote weekend for my first time watching and commenting. I think that was absolutely brilliant stuff to watch. I had a fantastic sprint race, so much chaos provided by the format and the reverse championship grid, backed up by a very aggressive, very strategic race. Came out with possibly the closest outcome possible in the end. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I know it wasn't always planned it would be this way, but I'm absolutely glad I've managed to do this today with you.
Been a delight to commentate with you as well. Obviously, here at the BUSR, it's not just a one product group here. We have F1 on Saturdays, obviously, but on Mondays we have AC, and on Tuesdays we have LMU. We also have a bit of a collaboration going on with ice racing as well. And we can't forget to thank the sponsors NSE, Simply Race, SimStaff, and Gridfinder. They help make this all happen. But it's been a delight to bring this race to you guys this evening. But that will be all from us. Have a good one.
Thank you.
There is no place and no moment in history where I could stand and say,